Welcome to VCB News, where we talk all Black, all culture, all the time. I'm your host, Kwamara Denise. Over the last couple of episodes, we've been talking about voting, legislation, the importance of voting, the election, and the election results. One of the main issues that came out of this election cycle and is sure to be a huge hot button topic during the 2022 midterm elections is so-called critical race theory. This is the fear-mongering that Republicans have put into the minds of white voters, white parents who are afraid to traumatize their children because they get to learn true historical facts around America. Okay, so what is critical race theory? Well, here's what I will tell you. Critical race theory is not at all, not one iota, taught in K-12 public school education. It is predominantly taught in graduate schools, sometimes in undergraduate, and you are elected into that programming, i.e. you decide that this is something that interests you and you want to learn more about it. It is not imposed upon you that in the ways that the Republican Party will lead you to believe. When we were looking through the election cycle, we saw people who were voting against critical race theory, and then they were asked, what is critical race theory? They had no idea. All they knew was that it was something quote unquote bad that made it seem that white people were bad people. Well, if history shows that you have done heinous actions, it is what it is. You call a spade a spade. But let's talk about what is actually taught in K-12 education. First of all, only 2% of the curriculum is at all dedicated to anything related to Black American history. And by the way, Black American history is American history. We built this country. This country was built on the back of slaves. Therefore, Black Americans built this country. If you've gone through the US K-12 American education system, you know that there is a lack of knowledge around Black American history, i.e. a full context of what American history is. What is taught are things like this. And what is often taught in K-12 public school systems is that yes, slavery existed, but you know, it wasn't that bad. I mean, those Africans needed some Christianity in their lives anyway. And man, they got free food and drinks, and the master treated them really well, so they were happy to be slaves. That's oftentimes what you listen to, or that's the gist of what they're trying to tell you in K-12 public history. And then at some point, the Civil War happened, and Abraham Lincoln said it's time to free the slaves, and so the slaves were freed. And again, we've now got a white hero freeing the slaves. Then we might touch upon Jim Crow really quickly as we move into the Civil Rights era. And in the Civil Rights era, they of course gloss over almost everything and then bring up two, what we like to call tokenized versions of Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. These are the so-called good civil rights heroes because they believed in peace and in working with the white people to make sure that we are all have equal rights. So that was women, that was Black people, etc. Well, first of all, that is not even the full scope of Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King. By the time that he was assassinated, he was in talks with Malcolm X about really thinking about radical revolutionary change. Rosa Parks had been a part of the civil rights movement almost since the time that she was born. Her father was very well known within the movement as a lawyer, and she had been marching and fighting for civil rights her entire life. She didn't just decide that one day she was tired on the bus and just didn't want to give up. No, that was a concerted effort, thought out, strategic thinking by an entire movement. We don't get to learn that or hear anything about it. So that's literally all that we are taught about Black American history. And Republicans and white folks want to erase just that 2% of curriculum that is dedicated to us off the map. They might even come back to us and say, well, you know, we've got Black History Month in February. Let me tell you, I've been to school systems across this country. It is amazing if during Black History Month we get more than just a little assembly and maybe some posters, okay? It's not an in-depth curriculum over that month celebrating the achievements and giving our children, our Black children, pride in being Black. So why all the fear-mongering now? What is going on? Well, one, Black people are not happy just sitting by the sidelines anymore, right? They thought they were making us complacent with the civil rights movement. As I've talked about before, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 constantly has to be ratified within Congress and the legislation, and it's come up 4 times already, and the bill cannot even be legislated on. By the way, that means that our voting rights as Black people could be gone if they choose not to ratify the Voting Rights Act bill of 1965. So we need to start thinking about why all of this fear-mongering is going on. They're concerned that their students will start being traumatized, their children will be traumatized, that they won't have pride in being white. Okay, but what about the pride in being Black? What about our children who are traumatized every day, who come out the womb knowing full well that they are Black? There have been stories across the country of our students being bullied for being Black, killing themselves because they are bullied for being Black. We know that there are students and people are talking all across the social media that the first time they realized that they were a Black child and someone said something negative to them was as young as 2 and 3 years old. We have to look out for our children. Do not let white people tell you what critical race theory is. What they want to do is say, we don't want your children and our children to know anything about Black people. They want to erase us from the history completely. That's what's going on in these school boards across the United States. The curriculum erasure. It is serious. It is deep. Let us not sit on the sidelines. Just like they're out there protesting at school boards, we need to be doing the same thing. We need to be advocating on behalf of our students. We need to protect them. That's it for today's VCB News episode. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. We want to hear from you. And stay tuned to our Instagram Live on Friday to discuss more on critical race theory.